playing paradiddles with the pens. Welcome to the Writer's Life, place where you get the sight, sound, smells, taste of my particular writer's life, where you get the truth about the writer's life. The whole truth, nothing but the truth. Subscribe if you haven't already. We're close to 5,000 subscribers. Punch the like button and tap the bell for notifications so that you don't miss out on even one exciting video. So I don't know. I was just fucking around with ideas today, and I told you about my elementary school experience, which was not great, except for the last couple of years. But and then I thought about, well, maybe I should talk next about my high school experience, But I went to a military school, which was at the time. Now it's a prep school. I mean, it was a prep school then too, but it was strictly military, old-fashioned, old English military. And there's really not much to report from it because it was so regimented and everything was so scheduled, and I was still like a real mama's boy, and there's just nothing to tell really about it. I never got laid, even though everybody lied and said all the boys lied and said they did, and nobody did, which is the most perfect segue to like my college experience, where I was still very immature, right? My freshman year, of course, still had no real idea of what I wanted to be. The only job I ever had was working for my dad's construction business as a laborer. I mean, I had other little menial jobs like parking cars and stuff like that, but yes, in high school, like parking cars, stuff like that. But I was a real, I didn't know what to do with myself when I went to college. Like, I remember vividly, like my first day arriving at Providence College and my mother making my bed for me. And, I could tell like some of the guys were like, his mother's making his bed. This isn't going to be good. And I think my father was trying to be like, stop, don't do that for him. You got to let go kind of thing. And my first semester really was like, I was like lost, completely lost. I didn't do any schoolwork. I didn't, at the time I got there, I was stocky weightlifter guy because I was just coming off playing football at the Albany Academy, and we never lost a game and played all the championship games. And I was stacked, even more than I am now, if you can believe it. No, I was about 195 pounds, and I like immediately set about losing weight, and I dropped like 50 pounds, like in a few months. I was that lost. I just was like, I made friends. I made really good friends who are still my friends to this day. And like, but when you're in college, how you sort of go from group to group to group to see where you fit. And I ended up hating the people that I lived with that first semester. And other than one guy, I've never spoken to any of them ever again. But I ended up that first semester, I won't make this a long story, but it's funny. I ended up that first semester with 3 Ds and a withdrawal. So I'm home for Christmas, and like we get a letter that's like, your son's on like, I don't know, like double secret probation or something, right? And so like my father, I thought my father would like flip, like he used to flip if I got a bad report card when I was little. But he just said to me, he said, look, if you get kicked out, you're going to work. It's as simple as that, so you got one more semester to try to fix it. But if you don't, I'm not putting you back in school. You're just going to go to work. I was like, I don't fucking want to go to work. So I remember like planning this out. Like I got back to school and like I immediately, it was one of these growing up things. Like I immediately went to my advisor and I said, what can I do? And he's like, switch from business, majoring in business. Cause I majored in business thinking like, oh, well, I'll just go in business with for my dad, right? Like I got a job waiting for me, so easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? All the time knowing I really didn't want to do that. But I was like taking the easy way out. He's like, switch your major. And I would suggest sociology. It happened to be like he was one of the chairs of the sociology department. And I really liked it because it was reading and writing. It wasn't English, but it was, it wasn't like an English degree, but it really was reading and writing. And I really loved the whole aspect of sociology and social psychology and getting into the mind of a person and the mind of a group and all this sort of stuff. It was really, I found it fascinating actually. And I killed it. I like ended up on the dean's list for that second semester, and I pulled myself out of my double secret probation. And from there on in, I like did well with school, except for a couple of courses here and there that I fucked up, like everybody does. So, and you learn the trick, and the trick is to like, I'm not going to pass this course, so you withdraw, and maybe you take something else over the summertime to make up for it or whatever. So, and also this leads me to, this is going to be a long story. I got to cut it short, but this leads me also to what I think I've mentioned before. I think I might be dyslexic. I've never been tested for it, but I have trouble with numbers. I've always had trouble with numbers, and I could never even grasp some of the simplest math concepts, no matter how many times they tried to pound it into my head. And also, I still, to this day, have trouble spelling even some of the simplest words, no matter how much I try. So I suspect I'm dyslexic. This is the way I grew up. So a lot of writers were dyslexic. John Irving's dyslexic. Kristen Catherine Rush is dyslexic. Dyslexic. So anyways, it doesn't really matter anymore. Anyway, so like sophomore year was like, this is when I started shedding my skin a little bit. Like I went from kind of like the preppy mama's boy guy to like I became like the tough punk rocker, and I started like dabbling a little bit with maybe like little, like some pharmaceuticals and stuff like that. Nothing heavy or anything like that. I was mostly drinking beer. I started smoking cigarettes, and this is where I went from like I was playing rugby before to now it was like I'm chucking all that and I'm gonna bring my drums to school and I'm gonna really get into music. And that's when I decided like, I'm gonna be a punk rock drummer. That's what I'm gonna do. That's what I'm gonna do for my life. And I started living my life like with that in mind or whatever. And I started seeing girls, still hadn't done the deed yet or whatever. And then junior year came around and I really shed my skin again. And I was starting to become much more comfortable. I was becoming an adult, 20 years old or whatever. And I got the girlfriend, and finally the heavenly event occurred. With a very pretty blonde, by the way. And if she's watching this, she'll know who I'm talking about. Very attractive blonde. And she was a good friend too, and still is. From there, like, I never stopped. And junior year and senior year, I completely learned how school works. You don't study the night before, you study in the morning and use your short-term memory. You pass the test, it all flows right back out again. Like I learned how to work it. In fact, I ended up having so much time on my hands that not only did I have like one or two bands, I delivered pizzas and stuff like that, and I really loved it. For the first time ever, I just loved being on my own and doing my own thing. And even though my parents were giving me money, I felt like I was taking care of myself, and and that was around the time where I started fooling around with writing. And so I kind of knew in the back of my head that, like, even though I wanted to be a punk rock drummer and all that stuff and be like the Ramones or the Jam or the Sex Pistols or whatever, which were by then actually older bands. But anyway, I kind of knew it wasn't realistic, that, it just, and I didn't quite have the passion necessary for it. So I really started drifting toward writing. And I actually started a novel and some short stories, but they all suck so bad. Oh, they were awful. And I took one English course on Faulkner, and I got a D in it. The paper was just brutal. It was awful. That was probably, in retrospect, that was probably a really good sign. It was probably a really good sign because it meant I was rejecting the formality of learning some sort of writing or English or whatever, and trying to find my own voice. But back then, at 20 years old or 21 years old, it's like cutting through a chunk of granite like with a toothbrush. It's going to take forever, you know. So by the time senior year came around, I think I knew I wanted to be a writer, but then something happened at the end of the year that changed everything. I got a case of the guilt because my dad said, "You're coming to work, right? I'll give you 2 weeks off, and then you're coming to work." And I thought, and like all my friends were like planning on going to either Asia or Europe for a few months and all that, which I should have done in retrospect. I should have insisted on it. But I did like the right thing, and I kind of like fell into that trap. You're kind of expected to join the family business, and I did, and I dug a big hole for myself. And I've spoken about that before, but I got out of the hole and ended up becoming a real writer soon enough, and going to writing school. But the writing school experience is also interesting, and I'll talk about that maybe tomorrow. All right, so I hope this wasn't a big ramble and that it was worth it. What was your college experience like? I mean, mine was just a lot of fun. The last 2 years, especially, just a lot of beer, some other things now and then, a lot of girls, a lot of music. It was just fun. I had a pickup truck. It was great. Best years of your life. All right. That's it. Enough of that. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Ciao, ciao.